Hey gardening friends, this is Alexis. Welcome to my garden. We've had wonderful weather today. It's been in the high 70s, so I thought I'd come out and start to refresh some of the pots that I have on the deck. So I have whiskey barrels and ceramic pots as well as grow bags, and I use these to grow tomatoes and peppers and other green vegetables. So I reuse the soil every year, and I just come out and I replenish the soil. And so what I use is mushroom compost, and then I add a little bit of worm castings, and then if necessary I'll add a little more potting soil. So a lot of these, or some of these anyway, still have plants or weeds from last year. There was a tomato growing in this pot, and you can see that the stem is still there. Now if this was in the ground, I would just leave this there and allow it to decompose, but because it's growing in a pot, you can see it really creates this fibrous root, and I want to be able to take that out and clean it out, and then I'll replace the soil as needed. And then over here I have a 3-tier green stalk, and I primarily grow herbs here. So I'm going to clean this out. You can see there's chives down here. They've already started to grow a little bit, so I'll come through here. This is, I think, oregano, so I'll come through and clean these out. There's sage, which is also a perennial, so that will come back. This is thyme. This will come back as well, so those I'll just cut back. But I'll clean this out so that I can come out and plant some more herbs and some green leafy vegetables this spring. So I'm going to go through each pot and dig out any plants that may remain from last year, pull any weeds or any leaves that may have grown into the pots. In this particular pot, there's, I think I grew tomatoes in this pot. So there's an entire stem there and the whole root system. So I'll just pull those out. And again, there's some soil that will come out with the root structure, and you can just replace that with a little new potting soil if you need to. And this is a bag of mushroom compost that I picked up from my local gardening center. And I'll just add a fair amount into each container. I don't really measure it, so I just pour it in, and how much ever I put in each pot, that's how much each gets. It's not very scientific. So I'll just add a little bit of the mushroom compost to each container. And now I'm going to add a little bit of worm castings to each pot. I'm adding maybe about just a scoopful into each container. In the larger whiskey barrels, I'll add a little bit more just because there's a lot of soil and volume in the whiskey barrels. I'll add a little bit more, but in the grow bags and the ceramic pots, I'm adding about 1 scoop to each container. And here I'm starting to add some additional nutrients to the soil. I'm going to first add bone meal, and then I'll add a little bit of blood meal to each pot. So the bone meal that I'm adding here is high in phosphorus, so that's going to be great for root development. I like to add this several weeks, maybe 2 to 3 weeks before I actually plant in the bags. This gives the bone meal and the blood meal time to break down. These are both organic materials, so it will take 2 to 3 weeks for it to break down and be available in the soil for the plants. So I try to do this 2 to 3 weeks before I start to plant things out in the garden. Now here I'm adding just a small amount of blood meal. So blood meal is high in nitrogen, which is going to encourage the leafy growth of your plants. So this is really great for, your brassicas and your spinaches and things like that. So you want to be very careful with the nitrogen. You don't want to add too much. So I'm just going to add a little bit to each pot. I have a little window box planter hanging on this side of the deck. So I'm amending the soil in this planter as well, and it'll be all ready for when I plant out the Gomphrena, which always goes into that planter. Now that everything has been added to each pot, I'm going to go through and try to mix everything in, maybe the top 3 or 4 inches of the soil. Just go through and mix everything in. Now when it's time to actually plant, I will check each container to see if it needs some additional potting soil, and I'll add potting soil at that time. I will do the same process for the green stalk. First, I'll go through and pull out any of the annual plants that need to come out. I'll just dig those out and get as much of the root system as I can. And then anything that's a perennial, I will go through and I will trim those back, because once it starts to warm up, they'll flush out and begin to grow. I will add a little bit of mushroom compost as well as worm castings to each pocket. Same thing with the blood meal and the bone meal. With these green stalks, you can pull them apart and fully replace the soil at each level. This is only, or will be, my second year using this green stalk, so the soil is actually pretty fresh. So I'm not going to do that this year. I'm just going to go in and add a little bit of the mushroom compost and the blood meal and bone meal into each pocket and mix that in. And then next season, I will probably remove all of the layers and replace some of the soil. I wasn't able to film that part of the process in terms of amending it, but here I did clear out everything, and then I followed that by adding the mushroom compost and the bone meal and blood meal. If you've gotten this far, thank you for watching. This is how I prep my containers for spring planting. Happy gardening.